Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Take the North podcast, along with Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune. I am Mark Grote of Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Coming up on the podcast today, our Friday edition, we will have our Listen to This segment, standing by what Dan deemed to be some of the coolest audio from the week. I know Dan is loaded with audio. I have just one cut that I will play that is fresh out of the locker room from Braxton Jones that we'll hear here in just a little bit. Dan, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. It was a interesting and productive week inside the locker room this week at Halas Hall, wasn't it?
That's a good way to put it. Interesting and productive. Yeah. Until predictably Friday, when we're recording this, is kind of faded. I mean, Fridays are always not very well attended, but today it was like,
we didn't get Montez Sweat as promised. So
no
Montez snuck out of week 11 without having to meet the media. I asked Bears PR guru Danny Marquino if he was willing to help pay Montez's fine for skipping out on his media obligations. He said no. Montez won't get fined yet.
Yeah, well, as long as this doesn't turn into a Khalil Mack literally getting an Uber to escape the media back in the day when he was always difficult to pin down, and finally we would get him on Fridays, and then it would be some Fridays. So the good news, though, about what is more important than our needs to bring you Montez Sweat, and that's Montez and all of that, is that it sure feels like Montez Sweat is going to play against Green Bay. He's been dealing with this ankle injury. He did practice in full today, Dan, but officially listed as questionable. And we know exactly how valuable that guy will be against this Green Bay offense on Sunday.
Well, I think the question is how effective can he be? He only played 29 of the 64 snaps against the Patriots, and he obviously missed the week before against Arizona. So it's been several weeks since we've seen peak Montez Sweat sort of wrecking a game and having a series by series impact on things. So Matt Eberflus did express optimism that he would be ready to start on Sunday. And then the question is can he be a factor? Can he make Jordan Love's life a little bit miserable on Sunday? And that's the goal. And hopefully Montez Sweat is able to be healthy enough to respond to that challenge.
Yep, and obviously will play a big part in stopping the very good run game led by Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers. And we all saw what it was like when he did not play a couple of weeks ago, and the run game, the run stopping was just terrible. There's mixed results on the offensive line. Tevin Jenkins is out for the Bears with an ankle injury, so Ryan Bates will step in his place. Meantime, Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright, both of your tackles returned this week, and that you don't really have to say much about that, Dan. I mean, that's just huge. We saw what an offensive line looked like without Jones, Wright, and Jenkins last week, and it was ugly.
Yeah, you have to hope that you go into this football game being functional up front. I was just talking on the afternoon show on 670 The Score about some of the rewatch of the Patriots game, which I didn't get to until late this week. Surprise, surprise. The league was a little bit backlogged this week, but there were moments in that football game last Sunday, Grote, where the Bears had 7-man protections in to stop a 4-man rush, and they still failed. They got whipped, and then Caleb Williams is hitting the top of his drop, and his receivers aren't turned around yet, and he's getting engulfed by rushers before he has any opportunity to do anything, even when you dedicated more bodies to protecting. And so somehow, some way, the Bears have to be better up front. Caleb's got to be better at getting the ball out front, and you would just hope that a return to those two starting offensive tackles will provide some of that reinforcement that was obviously clearly lacking against New England.
Well, I think that's a perfect lead into our Listen to This segment, where Dan and I gather our favorite audio of the week. And you mentioned Caleb Williams getting rid of the ball quickly. I thought it was interesting today that Dan and I were both in the press conference for Matt Eberflus today. And, he mentioned that in terms of the pre-snap penalties, he said the first thing he said was cadence. So we're going to hear about that here in just a second. And the very good question, too, of, there's a lot of sacks being taken by Caleb Williams, 9 of them last week. And, I don't know the breakdown exactly on who they are all on, but we also know that Caleb Williams has taken himself some bad sacks or just not gotten rid of the ball quickly enough, and it all sort of adds together. So in the locker room today, I asked Braxton Jones both of those questions, and I started with the cadence issue with Caleb Williams and the rest of the players that have to follow it properly.
Earlier in the year, kind of can deal with being on the road or whatever it is, being loud. And, it's a whole bunch of moving pieces that are trying to be put together. Some guys have been here for multiple years. Some guys just got here and just showed up and trying to figure things out. So it just takes all 11 trying to get on the same page. And obviously it starts up front with the O-line and obviously with Caleb too, all of us being on the same page. But we all know we need to be a little bit better in those cases and just being in unison. That's all it is, and just being better.
How do you guys get on the same page too with Caleb in terms of sacks that may not be the offensive line's fault? Some of it falls on him. How is that mix coming along?
Yeah, I mean, some of that I can't really speak on. My profession isn't really playing quarterback. I just want to block as long as I can for Caleb, no matter what it is, and just trying to be consistent for him. So, he's a young quarterback. I mean, this league is tough as a young rookie quarterback. So whatever he needs, I'll never put any blame on him. I know he's going through a lot, and I'm always there to protect him and try and, keep him upright and do whatever we can. Obviously, in terms of communication, it takes all 11. It takes the receivers. It takes the O-line. It takes the quarterback. It takes the tight ends. It takes the running backs. I mean, it's an all-11 thing, and we just need to be better in terms of communication, processing, getting up to the line quicker, and just being better.
Dan, it's the first time you're hearing that. What do you make of what Braxton Jones said there? And I know there was a decent amount of generalities and things that you just say, but what did you get out of that?
Yeah, so first and foremost, my initial reaction is that Braxton Jones continues to be a true professional, right? I don't know what his ceiling is as a starting offensive tackle in this league, and he's obviously still trying to prove that he can go higher than he's been. But man, that dude knows how to handle himself. He knows how to work. He knows how to get himself back from injury. He knows how to, kind of do his part to try to help this thing along. And you kind of hear that in some of those comments there, just how kind of locked in he is on what the mission is this week. You go back to the 9 sacks. There's a lot to unpack when you've got Principal Edward Rooney saying 9 times on the sacks that Caleb Williams took against the Patriots. Grote's first passing play of the game last week, 2nd and 7, the Bears get the huge punt return from DeAndre Carter, and they're right at midfield, and they dial up a max protect shot play to DJ Moore. It's play action. Caleb hits the top of his drop. The pocket can't be cleaner. DJ's one-on-one on the outside to Caleb's left. He doesn't throw the ball. He takes a 3-yard sack on the play, and it's one of those moments where you're like, well, why did the ball not come out there? And then it just snowballed from there. There's a number of moments, as I said a few minutes ago, where the offensive line is just completely breaking down, and Caleb's got no chance. And then there's other moments where Caleb's not throwing it where he's supposed to throw it, when he's supposed to throw it. And it was just an offense that was completely discombobulated, and by the end of the afternoon, totally broken. And so your hope here is that Caleb Williams takes a deep breath, that the offensive line help with Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright back, give him a little bit more comfort against Green Bay, and that there's a few drives here where he just settles back into that rhythm and that flow where this thing doesn't look like it did last week. Because by the end of that game, Mark, that was a offense that was defeated and completely broken, to be honest. And we'll see if they're able to fix themselves up enough to compete against the Packers on Sunday.
Yeah, and some of the real things that Braxton said, or buzz phrases that you hear from him, are a lot of the same stuff that we're hearing from a lot of people on offense. Not on the same page. Communication has to be better. Get out of the huddle, get up to the line of scrimmage. To me, that's all about the rhythm and timing, which has been off for the offense. And then, this also conceding that, and every once in a while we have to concede that it is a rookie quarterback who, as Braxton Jones said, is going through a lot. But hopefully that offensive line will look a lot better with big Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright back in play. All right, Dan, you have a triple play of cuts here, man. So lead us through it, brother.
Well, we're going to start out with captain and tight end Cole Kmet, who's been a good voice all season about some of the things that have been happening with this football team, with this quarterback, with this offense in general. Obviously, we had a chance to talk to Cole on Wednesday. Chris M and I were the first to get to him at his locker while the Caleb Williams and Thomas Brown press conferences were going on. And so this cut we're going to hear there is from that little 2-on-1 that Chris and I had with Cole by his locker. We start out by just asking him about Caleb Williams handling turbulence for the first time in his NFL career. This is a pretty heavy week for a young quarterback trying to understand the weight of hope and expectation that's been piled on him. So we start there with Cole, and then we jump into a little bit more of a diagnosis about what's gone wrong with the offense the last few weeks. Here is tight end Cole Kmet.
What can you do as a positive force to help Caleb through his first stretch of NFL turbulence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, just be there for him. I mean, we all have and I've said this in preseason and. Obviously when he was really lighting up the past a couple weeks ago, like we got the ultimate faith in him, and we wanted to play fast, play free, and play like almost like a kid out there, just having fun. And but there's also a lot of big mental side that he's got to handle as the quarterback, and that's a lot to handle coming from college to the pros. So we want to be there to help him where we can with it, whatever it is, whether it's in the run game, pass game, all those type of things, and just really help with those solutions to make things a little bit easier if we can in terms of the process and operation of the offense.
What's the difference you saw in London versus what you saw the last 3 weeks from him specifically in the offense?
Well, I think we were doing some things. I think those 3 weeks that were a little new. We did a lot of that up tempo stuff that I talked about. And I think in this league, you only can get away with doing the same things for so long. And teams catch up, teams get film, and you have to adjust. You have to be able to do all the types of motions. Do all the types of motions and adjust to the different types of defenses. And the fast tempo and the rhythm stuff is great, but like you got to have answers for a lot of different stuff. So I do think. Teams kind of saw that, and I think it helped with our operation. But we got to be able now to adjust and kind of take the next step of an operation in terms of an NFL offense. And I think that's kind of where things got caught up a little bit.
Wow, that is low key great stuff from Cole Kmet. I mean, it's so exact, and it's actually very easy. There has to be an adjustment. It's just like a batter and a rookie in Major League Baseball, and once they're on to you, they've got a scouting report. It's now Caleb Williams' move, or moreover, it's the coaching step. Back to the coaching, Dan. They have to adjust to not allowing Caleb to play, as Cole said, fast and free and in the no huddle. That was really good.
Yeah, and compelling in the standpoint that looked like they found something that worked for a few weeks in terms of getting Caleb to the line of scrimmage quickly, allowing him to see things, allowing him to diagnose and read, and then all of a sudden defenses adjusted to that, and the Bears didn't have an answer. And so Cole gives that to you in a way that's pretty forthright and candid, and now it's going to be interesting to see what they do in a week where they obviously have changed play callers and coordinators, and now have to put together a game plan that goes to attack the Green Bay Packers, who have a pretty strong defense. This is difficult, man. Like, and the mental side of things that Cole talked about for a rookie quarterback, it's not just the preparation. It's understanding that like you need to know everything. And we heard a little bit from Matt Eberflus today about the concept of quote unquote mastering the game plan, which has been a pretty heavy catchphrase around here this week. Well, that volume is as heavy as it can be on the quarterback himself. And when that quarterback's a rookie, now imagine trying to just kind of figure your way through that at a time when struggle is also mounting. That's a lot, mentally to handle just the game plan alone, not to mention the ramifications of what happened here this week. Your team failed, your offense struggled, your coordinator got fired. Okay, put that in your head and now try to master the game plan for the week. A lot of challenges for a 22-year-old kid here. We'll see how Caleb responds on Sunday afternoon in what's going to be a pretty big test of who he is and who this football team wants to be.
And there continued to be a lot of rah-rah for Thomas Brown, and everybody's enthusiastic, and he's a straight shooter. And I'll say it again, none of that stuff matters to me. I want to see how he calls plays, Dan, period.
I'm with you. I will say this, that I thought Mark Potash asked Cole a really good question in the middle of the week about how Thomas Brown's energy and charisma can translate into first downs. And it was a very potsy phrased question, but Cole knew exactly where he was coming from. And his answer was essentially, it creates buy-in in the game plan. And I think that is an important small prerequisite.
Okay.
I'm with you, but it's a small prerequisite that if the guy in the front of the room is saying it in a manner that makes you believe that, okay, he's got the answers here, well, maybe then you're I guess, more likely to believe in it and less likely to doubt it. But again, it does come down to what you do on Sunday, and this team has got to stop talking about things, and they have to start showing production on the field.
I will allow for it. Let's continue on with Listen to This. What else you got, Danny boy?
I got Keenan Allen, and we know we talked on Wednesday about the sort of money quote of the week with Keenan Allen saying that Shane Waldron's ultimate demise was that he was too nice of a guy and that he wasn't really holding people accountable. Well, in a 3-on-1 with myself, Mark Potash, and Kalen Kaler with Keenan Allen, we followed up a little bit on that, on the earlier request this season for by players, forced Shane to coach them a little higher, and then continued on with some more diagnosis of the offense through Keenan Allen's eyes. Here's a 12th year veteran and a 6-time Pro Bowl honoree putting his voice into this conversation.
You said Shane was a little too nice. I know that earlier this season, veterans had asked him to coach you guys harder. Did you see any difference after that conversation happened? And I guess it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit more urgency sometimes, especially when we went to London. It's a lot of urgency, just getting lined up, knowing the game plan. I think he used the term mastering the game plan, something like that. And for whatever reason, after that week, it didn't.
Do you know why? Can you explain why that didn't stick, that mastering the game plan mentality?
No.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I'm a guy that's going to show up every week and try to do it how it's supposed to be done every week, and that's all I controls.
Keenan, with Caleb, do you see him being in the right aggressive mind frame in terms of throws that he's willing to make right now without being fearful of making mistakes?
Yeah, absolutely. There's times on the film where he's making the throws, and you're like, that's not a question. The talent is the question. It's more of the, like I said, mastering the game plan, understanding what the play is, where the play is, and being able to do it without thinking about it and letting your talent show.
Is that just being quicker, more aggressive, or when you start thinking?
I wouldn't say more aggressive, just being able to take your profits. Completions is the name of the game. So anytime we're going backwards, it's tough.
The theme of that, Dan, is, tell me if I have this right, Caleb Williams needs to better master the game plan, the details, all of that involved, which I guess, again, for a rookie quarterback to some degree is understandable because they have seemingly put a ton on his plate. But he's talking, that whole conversation right there is about Caleb Williams, yes?
It's a fair conclusion to draw. And then the second level of it is, how do you get a rookie quarterback to master the game plan? Is that rooted in the preparation habits of the quarterback himself? Is it rooted in the volume of the game plan that you're trying to throw on his plate? What do you do to kind of make those things overlap in a way where the quarterback's preparation and the game plan that you want to use to beat your opponent marry together in a productive way and create momentum and create energy and create confidence? I think you hear Keenan talking about Caleb needing to just kind of play with his talent and his confidence rather than having his head involved in every play. You get up to the line of scrimmage, you try to get a feel for what you're seeing from the defense. You take your snap, you have to readjust to what you're seeing from the defense, and then you got to play football. You can't let those wheels in your head be turning in a way where they slow you down, or they create problems for what you're actually seeing and reacting to. My late father had a saying when we were kids: "Don't think, you hurt the team," and it was his message to us to just play with that confidence and that instinct and not allow your brain to be the thing that prohibits you from doing the things you're supposed to do on the athletic field.
It's such a conflicting thing, though, because I've heard that a ton of times where, just go out there and play, don't think, but you're a quarterback.
Yeah.
There's a ton of thinking that you have to do. And quite frankly, Dan, I think that Caleb Williams likes that part of the game. I think he likes changing around formations. I think he likes to audible. I think he likes having that power and everything that they've put on his plate. And I'll go back to it. I don't remember if I asked you this off the air or on the air, but it does sound like that they sort of they thought that he would be able to handle more, that they overestimated what Caleb Williams would be able to handle, probably because in part he said, throw it all to me. I want it all. I can do this. I'm a generational quarterback. And in some regards, the Bears fell for it.
He's smart. He's strong-minded. He's got a lot of things going for him. Well, now here you are in midseason. You're in the middle of a crisis. You're in the middle of a funk. You're in the middle of a slump, and you've got to find adjustments that return him to the state of play that created those 2 big weeks against the Panthers and the Jaguars. I think that's one thing you heard from players inside the locker room all week, is they at least have evidence that they can be an offense that scores 35 in a football game. They did it back-to-back weeks in October. So now you've just got to bring that back out. And so some of that, as Cole Kmet said, is creating the flow for Caleb and getting him back to where he can just kind of operate the way he's most comfortable and most confident. We'll see where they go from here. And again, it's not an easy thing to do on the fly with a coordinator change in a week where you're playing your rival in a game that's got a lot at stake for a lot of people. You know what I mean? If they get blown out by the Packers the way they got blown out by the Patriots, this week will be child's play compared to what we're going to face next week in terms of the noise and the outside cries for ramifications inside Halas Hall. And so,
do you think there could be more change if the Bears get blown out and embarrassed by the Packers?
I doubt
whether players, Caleb, coaches. What do you think?
I doubt it, but I think the intensity of the reaction will be doubled, right?
Oh,
I think it'll be intensified. And I think as a player, as a coach, you're not readying yourself for that because you're just preparing yourself to go be successful. But it's a reality that dynamic's lurking. And so you need to keep that dynamic outside the doors of Soldier Field on Sunday.
Wiederer, why don't you get us out of here with the big dog? I heard the big dog was talking.
The big dog is the one player on the Bears offense that is older than the new coordinator, 40-year-old Marcedes Lewis, 38-year-old Thomas Brown. They seem to have a good connection out of the gates here in their first season together in Chicago. Asked Marcedes Lewis a little bit about, what can happen here for this offense in the short term and about Thomas Brown's well-documented charisma and presence that we've felt and heard about all week. Here's Marcedes Lewis.
Significant week. What do you sense the change can do to get this thing turned around?
I mean, it's one of those things, like, obviously as far as like upstairs, things are going to go on that we really don't have no control over. So it's really just about focusing on the details, like we talk about all week, but also like being process driven, right? Whether we win or lose, we don't control that. But if you're doing all the right things, good things are going to happen. That's just the way the world works. And everybody here loves TV, really good dude, great energy, and is a dude, right? So she brings some juice to the offense. Even when, in weeks before, when he, does his presentations on situational football stuff, you could just tell he's just a sharp dude. He knows what he's talking about. I expect nothing but good things out of him and for the leadership on the team just to keep rolling.
Explain why that energy and that juice matters.
Well, it's just ball, man. Like, I think regardless if it's like Sundays during games or at practice, even just around the building, like you want that spark, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just good to feel good when you work. And he's a guy that brings it every day. And he's one of those dudes, if you're not having your best day, just running into him, it can change that. And the energy is infectious. It's good, man. We'll be all right.
If I was Thomas Brown, the first person that I would go up to after the game is Marcedes Lewis and say, "Did I do good?" Because we know what kind of effect Marcedes Lewis apparently does have on that locker room, and are very willing to call out his predecessor, Shane Waldron. But yeah, I mean, that's good stuff. I'm glad they support him. I mean, if they had taken somebody that was not supported, that would be a massive story. But let's see if that energy turns into a better offense.
The one quote that I want to pull from my from that bite, just for my own marker board at home, is it's just good to feel good when you work. It's kind of relatable, right? Like like you're investing a lot in things, and it's good when you feel like you're having a good time and you're being productive and you're having fun. And so, again, right, like this has been a lot of talk. There's a lot of aura. There's a lot of vibes. Sunday is what matters. Jalen Johnson has reiterated that all season long, that all of this other stuff is just kind of fun for the outside world. But there's 3 hours every single week where you have to take a test. And if the Bears fail that test, none of it matters, right? Like, so go out and pass the test for the first time since you left London. And hopefully that will calm things down. Again, like, I don't know how you feel, but if the Bears get to 5-5, there is going to be a breath of fresh air inside this building that is much needed to where they can suddenly say, okay, well, now at least we have steadied ourselves to the point where we can get back to, progressing as opposed to managing crises.
Yeah, well, I brought that up on the morning show on The Score on Friday morning with Mully and Haugh. I said if they do win, and let me be clear, I am picking the Packers to beat the Bears on Sunday, and I hate to have to repeat that over and over. It doesn't even feel good coming out of my mouth. But I did say, yeah, if they win this game and get to 5-5, the party's back on. The party is, and they countered with and justified. well, that's just one game. What about the rest of the schedule? But no, if you can figure out a way with the state that your team is in, if you figure out a way to beat a team that right now, top to bottom, is way better than you, then that probably would suggest that you have the ability to beat some of these other teams like Detroit and Minnesota and San Francisco all coming up. So, yeah, this thing can be straightened out quickly with a win. I will just say this here. Last thing that I'll say here on the Take the North today is that I appreciated what Matt Eberflus said today. Somebody brought up the fact that Pat Scales is the only one in that Bears locker room that has beaten the Packers. And they said, is that a problem for you? And Flus was like, yeah, it is a problem. He's like, we have talked about it. 0-10 in the last 10 games. It's not good. Braxton Jones, I didn't play that part, but he said something similar. You mentioned Jalen Johnson. He said he's pissed off about it. He's like, he even went so far as to say, man, I just want one win against these guys while I'm here. So they do feel this Green Bay rivalry and the need to beat this Green Bay team.
Yeah, it's that Cole Kmet, Jalen Johnson draft class. They've been here. This is their 5th season now. They've never beaten them. The group before that never beaten them, and it's hard to fathom, And it's not just losing 10 in a row. It's that a lot of those games have been absolute magnifying glasses on how poor the Bears are and how much of a gap there is between them and teams that matter in this league, right? Like, I think that's where the embarrassment comes from, because it's just a constant exposure of, the I own you, I freaking own you stuff, right? Like, you have no response to that. And the Bears have to summon up a response at some point. It would be really interesting if they were able to get it done this Sunday, because it will change a lot of things. It'll change the energy for sure, and then push them into a week next week that will feel different than the last 3 or 4 have, because again, every single week has had its own crisis to manage, and I think there's a fatigue that comes with that. It's like, just have a normal week, right? Like, just have a normal week, and a normal winning week would be even better.
Dan, I will look forward to seeing your smiling face in the Soldier Field press box on Sunday.
I will see you there.
Yep. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, for liking, for commenting. We read as much as we possibly can, even in weeks like this. So we appreciate all the support that the Take the North podcast has gotten. And so for Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune and Adam Studzinski, our executive producer and the producer of the Bernstein and Harris show on The Score, I am Mark Grote. This is the Take the North podcast.
Good talk. See you out there.